theyeshiva.net.
I want to discuss with you this morning a fascinating, beautiful halacha mitzvah, which is recorded in this week's Torah portion in Mishpatim. It's in Exodus chapter 22. Shmais Perek Chav Beis, Psukim Chav Daled Chav Hei Chavav. Exodus chapter 22, verses 24, 25, and 26. I'm going to read the verses inside and translate. Im kesef talve es ami, es ha'ani imach, loisia loikenaisha. When you lend money to my people, to the poor person among you, do not press the person for repayment. Loisisimun alav neshech. Also, do not take interest from the borrower. Im chaval tachbal salmas reyacha, ad boy hashemesh tishivenu loy. If you take your friends, the borrowers, night garment as security for the loan, you must return it to him before sunset. Of course, people often took collateral, as they still do for a loan, as a security that you're going to pay me back my loan. The Torah says, Im chavel techbel, if you took as security, as collateral, salmas reyacha, the night garment of your neighbor, of your friend who needed the money, make sure to return it to him before sunset. And here the Torah goes on to say, listen to the words, Ki hi chsusay levada, hi simlosay la'oirei, b'meh yishkav, v'hoya ki yitzak elai, v'shamati ki chanon ani. You know why you must return it to him before sunset? Because this alone is his covering. It's the garment for his skin. With what shall he sleep? Therefore, if he cries out to me, I will listen, because I am gracious and compassionate. There are 613 mitzvahs in the Torah. Most of them are recorded without an explicit reason, or at least not with a detailed, nuanced, elaborate explanation. Even when there is a reason given, it's much more general and brief. For example, sometimes the Torah will say, I want you to do this in order to commemorate the Exodus of Egypt. Especially when a law is obvious, meaning its reasoning, its rationale is self-evident, the Torah would usually not even give a general reason. It relies on the person's understanding. For example, the Torah never gives a reason why not to murder. It says two words, loy tirtzach, don't murder. Why not? The Torah doesn't give a reason for it. In Bereshis, it already told us what a human being is. Shoifech dama adam, ba'adam dama yishafech ki b'tzelem elakim asas adam. Before Matan Torah, the mitzvahs that were given to Noach after the flood, it says pouring the blood of a person will result in his or her own bloodshed. Ki b'tzelem elakim asas adam. A human being was carved in the image of God. That's the foundation of Torah. As a result of that, many mitzvahs will be understood. The Torah never tells us why not to steal. It says, Loi signoivu, don't steal. Why not? Torah never tells us why not to kidnap. It says you're not allowed to kidnap. This week, somebody kidnaps a person, sells the person, is a death penalty. Why? Doesn't say why. Torah doesn't even say why to help the needy. It says, you should love another person like you love yourself. And there are many, many mitzvahs connected to that. Here, in this mitzvah, there is a blatant exception to the rule. The Torah could have concluded the mitzvah with the words, you have to return to this person the security, the collateral before sunset. We would have all understood the reason.
Why take it?
Huh?
Why take it in the first place?
That's 1 second. You take it for daytime. You take it for daytime. You're saying, what's the point? Don't take it. So if the Torah is saying, you took his garment or her garment, you want security, give it back by sunset because it's a night garment. we could all understand the reason. You're talking about a poor person, a woman or a man. The person needs this garment for nighttime. That's the reason. Yet here, the Torah decides to present the reason, and not concisely, but with quite a lot of fanfare and drama, unusual in the whole Torah when describing a law. Doesn't just say return it before sunset and we'll figure out why. Ki hi ksusai levada. Because this alone is his covering. It's not enough. Hi simlasai la'oiroi. This is the garment for his skin. Bamei yishkav. What is he going to sleep in? How is he going to sleep? With what shall he sleep? V'haya ki yitzak elai. And when he cries out to me, v'shamati, I'm going to listen. Ki chananani, because I'm compassionate. Even if it wants to state the rational, the Torah could have given the reason very succinctly and very simply. For this alone is his covering. Give it back before sunset. Because he, ksusa levada, because this is his covering. He doesn't have another covering. We would all get it. Even if you want to give a reason, unlike most mitzvahs where you don't give, including charity or not stealing or not kidnapping or not murder, but here you want to give a reason, say it clear. Say it short, brief. Here the Torah feels compelled to give a very elaborate reason and a very dramatic one. And it seems even repetitive. This alone is his covering. This is the garment for his skin. With what is he going to sleep? Therefore, if he cries out to me, I'm going to listen because I'm gracious and I'm compassionate. The sages were always perturbed when they observed repetition in a biblical verse. And here too, there seems to be a lot of repetition. He says, this alone is his garment. Ki hi ksusa levada. Then it says, hi simlase la'orei. It's the garment for his skin. Isn't that repetitive? You just said, this is this person's covering. It's the garment for his skin. With what shall he sleep? The Torah could have said, this alone is his covering. Why the repetition? The garment of his skin. And then, with what shall he sleep? Yeah, obviously, if it's his only covering and it's the garment, the only garment he has for his skin, when he goes to sleep, he's not going to have anything. It seems to be superfluous or excessive. Obviously, if he doesn't have a night garment, he doesn't have a garment to sleep with. At night, we go to sleep. So the Mechilta, which is the basic oral commentary on Sefer Shmos, quoted in Rashi, explains, Ki hi ksusa levada zu talis. This alone is his covering, is referring to the blanket. Hi simlase la'orei, the garment for the skin, is referring to chaluk, the tunic, the shirt. Bamei yishkav, with what shall this person sleep? Lahavi er matzah, is referring to the mattress. The way that Barbanel explains this is, the ordinary person goes to sleep with three components. He or she has a blanket to cover them. That's number one. They also wear pajamas or some other garments. And then, of course, there is a bed or at least a mattress to lay on. This poor person has none of these. This person has one garment. This garment serves as a blanket, it serves as pajamas, and it serves as a mattress. This one and single garment that I took as collateral serves all of this poor man's or woman's night needs. It's not like there's a blanket, there's a mattress. No, you took the pajamas. No. This only garment is what separates this poor man and woman from the earth beneath him or her. This shirt that he or she puts on, or the pajamas, this is the only thing that they have to separate them and the cold earth, or the cold winds scathing above him or her. It's the one single garment that you have taken as security for the loan, which serves as a mattress, as a blanket, and as a garment. So it's not repetitive. According to the Barbanel, the way he understands the Mechilta, it's actually pointing out the seriousness. This is not just a garment. This is a garment that serves as a blanket, as pajamas, and as a mattress. We see here the meticulousness in all of the expressions. Ksusay levada zu talis, simlasay la'orei zu chaluk, bamei yishkav matzah. Blanket, pajamas, mattress. This opens us up to a perspective of how to understand this pasuk. Because we see here that the Torah is really trying to articulate the painful and devastating results that will occur if this poor person does not receive their collateral back at night. When the Torah says, with what shall he sleep? Bameh yishkav. With what shall he sleep? It's really not written to articulate the point itself. We understand the halacha. The objective is, it seems, to penetrate the heart of the reader. I'm trying to tug at your emotions, at your heart. We would have figured it out on its own. Trust me, anybody who reads Chumash, it says, give it back at night, you'll understand why. Even if you want to say, because this is what he wears at night or she wears at night, you would understand. But the Torah is trying to go one step deeper. With what shall he sleep is an attempt to penetrate our hearts. Why? By this law. As I told you, you could read through all the mitzvahs in the Torah. It usually says what to do. Sometimes you know the reason, often you know it, sometimes you don't, sometimes it's written very generally. Here there is a unique exception in the elaboration and the emotional elaboration. The reason is, perhaps because this mitzvah, this law, is unique from all of the laws of the Torah. In this law, the Torah is establishing a new genre, a new type of mitzvah, a new type of law. One that is not called for legally, unless you can cultivate a particular art that the Torah is trying to cultivate here in the human being. And it's important now to go back a few thousand years. Like everything, once it's established, once it takes root in culture, once it becomes part of the collective and individual psyche of a people, it's obvious. But when things are first articulated and written and revealed, they're anything but obvious. In fact, many new ideas that emerged from the minds of individuals at first are dismissed, makdat. They evoke cynicism or insecurity. First, people are deemed crazy. Then they're deemed in the second stage as liars. And then everybody takes the credit. First, he's a meshuggah, a tzedreiter. Then he becomes a liar, a manipulator. And then when we see he's right, oh, I came up with it. This is what often happens. I say this because it's important here to understand the paradigm a few thousand years ago when this halacha was written. Legally, one can argue against this mitzvah if you want to think in cold legal terms, as you just did a moment ago, very wisely. A person came to me and asked me to lend him money. If he would have asked me for a gift, that's fine. He didn't. He asked me for a loan. You know what a loan means? A loan means you're supposed to pay it back. That's what a loan is. He requested a loan. He obliged himself to pay back the loan. Payback time comes. He violated his commitment. He didn't pay back the loan. So, I demand a security from him on the loan. I want him to get me the money in one way or another. So therefore, I take the one thing he owns. What does he own? His night garment. Does it hurt? Of course, it hurts that he has to borrow money. It hurts that he doesn't have money to pay back. That's exactly the point. I want him to get me back my money, and until then, he doesn't get back his garment. As you said, you take collateral and then you give it back a few hours later, you take it again in the morning. So who's now the slave and who's now the owner? Basically, I keep on running to your house every morning to take back your pajamas, and then it's sunset. Oh, you have to stop everything. Your uncle needs pajamas. I run to give him pajamas in the morning. Give me back the pajamas. It's a loan. No, you got to run back. You have to drop everything. Your uncle needs pajamas. It's sunset. Remember, sunset used to mean it gets dark before Thomas Edison. But isn't that the point? I want to get back my money. You didn't pay me my money. You took money from me. I'm keeping my garment until you get the money. I didn't steal your money, and I didn't steal your garment. You gave me the garment as part of your moral obligation and commitment to pay me back. As you asked, by returning the garment to this person each night, after sunset, I'm actually undermining my chances to ever get money. This guy got cake, and he eats it too. He doesn't have to pay. He knows that Mr. Nice Guy, or even not Mr. Nice Guy, has a halacha in Parshas Mishpatim, Ad boy hashemesh tishivenu loy, you can't even wait to sunset. By sunset, it already has to be on the doorstep of his or her home. He got no urgent fire burning, nothing urgent motivating him to act swiftly. At night, I'm giving him back the garment. Doesn't it make sense legally to keep the garment until I get the money? Legally, this is a very strong argument. I didn't ask you to borrow from me. I'm not responsible for all the injustice, all the inequality in the world. You borrowed. You didn't have to. You're supposed to pay me back. I want security for my loan. But what am I doing? I'm making sure that you can get away with never paying me. You could schlep me out for another 30, 40 years. Why? You will have your pajamas. We all understand legally the taina against it. As you put it very well, don't take a security loan if you can't keep it. And you have to give it back within the next few hours. That's why the Torah is compelled here to do something it rarely does. It asks you to empathize with the person. It asks you to put yourself in his or her shoes and appreciate what they're going through. Rarely is there a halacha or a mitzvah that the Torah ever does this. It tells you what to do, what not to do, what to eat, what not to do, what not to eat, what to touch, what not to eat, what to touch, where to go, what not to go, how to behave, how not to behave. What's moral, what's immoral, what's kosher, what's not kosher, what's sacred, what is mundane, what is pure, what is impure, what is holy, what is unholy. Here, it actually is not just giving a reason for a law. That it doesn't do usually. It's trying to take me on a journey into the other person's world, into the other person's life. It wants me to understand the world of the other person. It's not justifying his or her actions, negligence if there was, misconduct if there was, lack of responsibility if there was, laziness if there was or was not. You may be right in all of your calculations. Maybe this person has come to rely on others too much. Maybe this person is using the community and your generosity and not rising up to the plate. Maybe it's true, and maybe he or she has to be spoken to about that and figure out ways of dealing with that. That's all true. And therefore I may say, I have to hold on to this garment to teach this person a lesson. Comes the Torah and says these words. But this alone is his covering. What's the Torah saying? I know what you're saying. I know your calculations. But this alone is his covering. This is the garment of his skin. With what shall he sleep? Is this a legal argument? Maybe yes, maybe not. The Torah says, maybe yes, maybe not. But I need you to experience for a few moments the end result. This is the only garment this woman or man owns at night. You can take it from them, and you could claim you're right. But the bottom line is, with what is she or he going to go to sleep? Or as the Medrash puts it, Medrash Tanchuma, Parshas Mishpatim, and the Medrash always fills in the gaps. With what while he sleep or she sleep, the cold will devastate this person during the nighttime. I'm going to be in a warm bed with your pajamas hanging in my closet. Maybe I'm right. But it's a cold night. This person is left with nothing. Literally nothing. No blanket, no mattress, and now not even a shirt. There's another medrash in Tanchuma Parshas Mishpatim. And this is such a moving medrash, it's worthwhile to quote verbatim, and I'll translate. The Torah doesn't only say, with what shall he sleep or she sleep. The Torah says, and when he screams to me, I'm going to listen because I'm gracious. What is he going to scream about? He didn't pay back a loan, and I took his security. I have his collateral. So the Medrash says, Hu koirei tagar lefonai va'omer, riboyin ha'olam, ani adam v'hu adam, hu shoichev al mitosoi, v'ani b'meh eshkav, lefichach v'shamati kichanan ani. The poor man is going to criticize me. He's going to complain to me. Koirei alai tagar. He's going to get upset, so to speak, on the Ribbono Shel Olam and God. Master of the universe. The Medrash quotes him as saying, I am a human being, and the lender is a human being. He sleeps on a bed, and I don't have on what to sleep. I don't even have a garment to separate me from the floor. I don't have a garment even to cover me. God says, to these words, I listen. Ki chanonani. The poor man is, in other words, going to cry to Hashem, and he's going to say, I know I have to pay my loans. I know this person didn't steal my garment. I know this person was actually kind. He gave me a loan when I needed the money. You're right. I have one question. It's an existential question. It's an emotional question. It's not a legal question. We're both humans. Why does he have a bed? And why don't I have a bed? Ani ben Adam v'hu ben Adam. We're both human beings. This person has a mattress. I don't have a mattress. All the legal rights in the world, all the logical calculations in the world don't have the power to answer this question. We're both human beings. We were both carved and are carved in the image of God. We were both born from mothers and fathers. We will both die and become fodder for the worms. Why does he get to go to sleep each night in a bed, in pajamas, covered by a blanket, and I don't? So to be a Jew, says the Torah, I need to be attentive every day and every night to this question. And yes, legally, a cold person could say, well. You're undermining yourself, you're undermining society, you're creating people who are crippled morally and emotionally and financially. You're creating people who are completely independent, people who are completely codependent and interdependent and dependent. This is not a good thing, which all are rational and very important points, which is why the Rambam famously says that the greatest and highest level of charity is not to give charity to a poor person, but to help somebody establish themselves financially so that they don't need charity. Help somebody figure out how to make their business successful, give them an investment, give them a loan so that they should be able to have their independence. That's the greatest form of tzedakah, not to make people reliable and dependent. Of course, that ideal is profoundly true. You want to empower people. You want to show people that they can be successful with God's help. But in this reality, the Torah says, but never ever allow moral and logical calculations, albeit important, justified, sometimes very justified and important to talk about, to stop you from feeling the life of the other person, from empathizing, from experiencing what the other person is going through. Yeah, but they did it to themselves, and I work hard, and I work 18 hours a day, and this lazy guy's... Somebody sent me a video a few days ago. So he says he's standing in the street, and a Jew from a particular city where there's a lot of beggars comes over to him, and he's smoking. He says, a cigaretto. You know what a cigaretto is? Huh? A cigaretto, a cigarette? He says, sure. Takes out a cigarette, gives it to him. Which today is actually very generous. It's expensive. He says the guy takes it, walks away, breaks it up into pieces, crumbles it, and throws it into the garbage. I say, hey, Yankel, I don't understand. You asked me for a cigarette. I give you a cigarette. You destroy it? He says, here's a Chaim. Smoking, I quit already 3 weeks ago. I don't smoke anymore. Aber Schnorren kann ich nicht aufhören. Schnorren kann ich nicht aufhören. I can't stop begging. You know what I mean? Was willst du? That I can't. I don't know how to translate it. It's a word in Yiddish. Guy who has a PhD from Harvard in fundraising. It's important to understand. Listen, Winston Churchill once said something very wise. He said that, this was the era, and it's happening today in America. There was the big debate of how society should operate. Socialism or capitalism. I don't have to tell you that Karl Marx was a Jew, and his manifesto advocating a socialist world triggered and captured the imagination of millions of Jewish youth, which is why Jews in the last century were some of the greatest supporters of the socialist revolution, the communist revolution, and the Bolshevik revolution. Of course, in their mind, it was supposed to be paradise to humanity. Leon Trotsky's name was Lebel Bronstein. Not Leon Trotsky, the father, one of the fathers of the Bolshevik Revolution and the father of the Red Army. He was a Yiddish kind, Lebel Bronstein, Leon Trotsky. Later, Stalin had him axed in August 1940 in Mexico. Because if you were Trotskyite, then you became persona non grata, because after Lenin died in 1924, Stalin ultimately got control, and Trotsky was marginalized and alienated and had to go into exile. But much of the Politburo, of the inner circle of the communists, were Jews. They hated Jews, they hated Judaism, but they were Jews, and they were proud Jews. There were millions of Jews who supported socialism and communism. In their mind, this was messianic. Equality. Nobody owns anything. There's no jealousy. There's no competitiveness. You don't have such a story of you giving me a blanket at night because I don't have what to sleep. It's not your blanket. It's not my blanket. It's the people's blanket. Mai Tzu-tung, the People's Republic of China. The only problem is 70 million deaths later in China, or in Stalinist Russia, 40 million deaths later, the socialists, the communists created living hell on earth. But it sounds much more idealistic than capitalism. Capitalism sounds selfish, narcissistic. You work hard and make your own money, and now you're giving me loans and you're taking away my pajamas at night. Feh. The Torah says, by day take the pajamas. You know why you take money? Because he owes you money. Is this a socialist verse or is it a capitalistic verse? Which one is it? Huh? Would Bernie Sanders like to quote this pasuk? Huh? Sunset. He doesn't have what to sleep in, right? But in the morning, you could take it back. You could take it back. It's so important to see the nuance of Judaism. So I'm going to quote Lahavdil Churchill, who once said, he said, capitalism has a very big problem. It's the unequal distribution of success. And it's unequal. Socialism is the equal distribution of misery. Judaism believes that there's something called ownership. There's something called property. There's something called boundaries. There's something called hasagas gvul. There's something called bailos. There's something called kinyan, acquisition, it's mine. But Judaism also says, Lashem ha'aretzim loya, tevel v'yoshviva. Never allow your success, which is absolutely justified and important, because what personal success allows for is human creativity. It allows for people to work hard and generate income and be very successful. And it does well for everybody. It creates success for everybody. Taking away ownership from people The kibbutz movement in Israel was built on this. The kibbutz movement in Israel was built on socialism. And it was built by some very idealistic people. Socialism in the books, in theory, is very idealistic. In practicality, every society that tried to create it created a living purgatory. At least many of them. And the reason is that you can look what happened in Pol Pot's Cambodia, you can look what happened in Stalin's Russia, you can look what happened in Mao Zedong's China, you could look at Cuba, etc. Why is this? The reason is, as George Orwell will explain to you in Animal Farm, because communism is based on the fact that all people are equal, but some of us are more equal than others. Who's going to guarantee that? And what if the people on the top don't have pure hearts? You have a disaster, a catastrophe. Besides that, as the Gemara says, Adam roitze bekav shaloi mitisha kavam shel chaveira. When you own something, when you create something, you put your heart into it, you put your soul into it. There's a special creativity that is cultivated through the entrepreneurship, through the human ingenuity, that it becomes yours, and everybody gains from it. It's called empowerment. But the Torah says, never forget L'Hashem ha'aretz umloya, and therefore, you can have all the calculations of capitalism in the world. But when you're going to sleep, you need to stop and say, okay, maybe that person needs help in one way or another. But it's cold at night. You have a sheet, you have a blanket, and if you're in a hotel, you have another 4 blankets. You have 20 pillows, you don't know what to do with them. And you could put the heat a little higher. You can even drink a hot coffee, even take a salt bath in hot water, or go into the steam. For work, maybe you worked very hard, and this person, and this person has nothing to sleep in. Remember that. Recall it. Understand it. Empathize it. There was the great founder of the Musar movement, Rabbi Israel Salanter, who lived in the 19th century, Rabbi Israel Lipkin, and he once said, you know, in every Jewish kitchen, what happens when you find a Blutstrop? A Blutstrop. A blood spot. A blood spot. You're making an omelet in the morning, you're making an egg, and you find a blood speck in a fertilized egg of a chicken. So the egg is unfit to eat. And every kosher kitchen, they take the egg and they throw it in the garbage. You spill out the yolk and you throw it in the garbage. Rabbi Sol Salanta said, but sometimes you're looking at your money and you could find a Blutstrop on your money. You could find on your money a speck of blood from the person you squeezed out. You squeezed his blood. You have green dollars. You have a check, signed check. But he says, look, there's blood on it. There's a Blutstrop on the check. It's not in the egg. It's on the check. It's on the dollar bill. He says, do you realize that that money is also treif, just like your egg? He was once, his students were going to bake matzah Erev Pesach. So they asked him, Rebbe, before we go to the matzah bakery, tell us if there are any hidurim, any special halachos that you are careful for when we bake the matzah. Because when people bake the matzah, there's a lot of stuff going on there. I mean, many of you are spared. But if you go to a matzah bakery, you'll see there's a lot of tension going on over there. Because of the chash, the concern, chametz, and changing the sticks, and cleaning the bowls, and making sure that the dough is kneaded swiftly so that 18 minutes don't pass. It's a very intense and super attentive environment because of the greatest, easiest thing to become chametz is, of course, matzah. It's the most natural thing to become chametz because it's flour and water. So they asked Rabbi Sol Salanta if there's any special hidurim, any special chumrah, stringencies that he wants them to adhere to when they bake the matzah. So he said, yeah. And you know what he said? He said, the woman kneading the dough is an almana. She's a widow. And she needs the job because she needs to support her family. But she's a broken heart. And in the matzah bakery, they always scream, Schneller, 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 was kratze, fast, 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 come on. So he says, in order for you to make sure that your matzah is beautiful, you transgress all the mitzvahs in Torah about being sensitive to a person who's been humbled by life, to a person who experienced grief in life. And in the name of your own religiosity, you're screaming. So he says, my hidur, my beautiful matzah will be if I know that when I eat the matzah, nobody was screamed at, no widow was hollered at when you were trying to bake this matzah. In other words, I don't want a blutstrop on my matzah. I don't want a speck of blood, human emotional grief or sadness or pain on my matzah. So the Torah is saying you can take the garment, you could keep it overnight. If somebody says legally, what's your right? You have legal rights. But when the sun sets and the garment is in your closet, and you know that the borrower has nothing to sleep with tonight, no blanket, no shirt, no pajamas, no mattress, how will you be able to go to sleep knowing that there is a blutstrop, there's a speck of blood on your pajamas or in your closet? The Gemara says in Tractate Baba Metzia, page 30, Amar Rabbi Yochanan leicharva Yerushalayim elo shehemidu dineim al din Torah. Rabbi Yochanan said Yerushalayim was destroyed because people insisted on enforcing their rights based on Torah law. This is a reason to destroy Yerushalayim. That's a wonderful thing. Everybody is following din Torah, the letter of the law. What Rabbi Yochanan was saying is that sometimes when you follow the law, legally you're right. But in the name of legalities, you could be a cruel person because your heart is deaf to the reality of the other person. You have justifications. You text me, you come to heaven, you're going to be checked off for a fine person. The problem is, for you, life is about checking off boxes. I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, I didn't do this, I didn't do this, I didn't do this, I didn't do this. You don't have a soul. Your soul is dead. What does it mean Yerushalayim is destroyed? Yerushalayim is the place of the divine presence. The divine can't dwell in me. The divine can't dwell. I'm doing the right thing. Din Torah, for everything I have a source. Look, it says here, it says here, it says there, it says there. But the soul is not there. The heart is not there. The empathy is not there. I shared once a story, the Panovich Rav Kahanman. He built an orphanage for orphans who lost their parents during the Second World War. In Bnei Brak, he had an orphanage for girls. The girls grew up, and Friday night, they would have their meals in their home where they ate and slept. And Friday night, they had a lively Shabbos meal, and they would sing. So a neighbor of theirs came to the Panovich Rav Kahanman, Yosef Shlomo Kahanman, Zechrona Levracha, and said, it's really not right. These girls sing loud, and I'm in the house nearby, and Kol B'Yishaerva, I'm not supposed to hear it, and it's just not the right thing, and can you control them? He says, what do you want me to do? He says, tell them not to sing, or they should just sing like in a whisper, very, very low. Panovich Rav debated, he deliberated, he felt that this is a question that he should ask somebody else, so he went to the Chazon Ish. Chazon Ish was considered in that time one of the great halachic sages and authorities. He passed away in 1953 in Bnei Brak. His name was Rabbeinu Avram Yeshaya Karelitz. So the Panovich Rav Kahanman came to the Chazon Ish to consult with him on the question. And he went into him and he started to tell the story in Yiddish. And he said, the girls are singing Friday night and they're lively and they sing loud. And this neighbor of theirs came to complain to me that I should silence them because of modesty and so forth. As he's in the middle of telling the story, before he asks his question, he's saying the girls are singing and they're lively. The Chazon Ish interrupts him and says, Azoi, Azapsura Toyva, the Meidlach singen schein, says, eine Freilich, sie haben lieb Shabbos. Wow, he says, what good news that these orphans, Friday night, have reached a point that they can celebrate and rejoice and laugh and giggle and sing. That is unbelievable piece of news, that these girls who went through so much, can really have an enjoyable, warm evening of camaraderie and friendship and song and music, celebrating the holy day of Shabbos. The Panovich Rav didn't have the heart to finish the question. My speculation is that the Chazon Ish understood what he wants to ask, but he was making a point. And the point is, these girls have been through, have endured such pain in their life. They come together Friday night and they're singing. That's an extraordinary piece of information. Are you going to stop that? How can you stop it? So now you'll ask, but the person is a neighbor. The answer is, go to a shul, learn till 2 o'clock in the morning. By then the girls will be asleep and go home. If it's not good, move to Yerushalayim for Shabbos. If that doesn't work, come to Monsey for Shabbos. This is quiet around here, one of these tents. At least till they take it down. On the books, what do you mean? Kol b'yeshiva. I live here. I have a right to this house. They're next door. Tell them to be quiet. You have to have a soul. You have to have a soul. You have to have empathy. The man is going to scream. Ani ben Adam, v'hu ben Adam. We both were born from mothers. We both ran around as babies. He's in this place in life, and I'm in this place in life. Why? And for that, there's no easy answer in life. That's why the pasuk has to elaborate here. It's not a regular mitzvah. This is asking you to do something very strange. In the morning, you're holding on to your rights. In the morning, you're a capitalist. And in the evening, you're a socialist. You know what a socialist is? You're a socialist. Who are you? Who are you? There was a reason that so many Jews were socialists. They found it in Judaism. But which one is true? Somebody once asked the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe, he was on a train in the 1920s. In the 20s and 30s, Jews all day would argue which is the right ism in the world. Today, the discussion is more about iPhones. But in the 20s and 30s, in the salons in Paris and Berlin, the conversation was, what's the future of humanity? So he was traveling on a train, and there was a group of Jews, intellectuals, and each of them had a different opinion. Which political philosophy does Torah embrace? Some were saying Torah is capitalistic. Ownership, people own. Others said, no, Torah is socialist. 10%, you have to give for tzedakah. It's not a choice. You have to give. Better 20%. There's Truma and Maise Rishon and Maise Sheni and Maise Oni and Leket and Shikche and Peya. And there's Moyes Chitim and there's Matnas Kohuna and Karbon. It's full of things you have to give and share. And Achnas Sarchim and Avos Yisrael and Gemilas Chsadim and no interest. It's all socialistic. And they argued back and forth, and everyone brought proofs to their side from Torah. So they went to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Shneis, and they asked him for his opinion. So he said something very profound. And you could hear the emes of the truth of it. And he said, every political system, almost every political system that has emerged since the beginning of human civilization to figure out how to run the world, because whenever you have a group of people living in one territory, you have to have a system. How are you going to balance the need of the individual versus the needs of the collective? This is the great question of what politics is. How do you balance? We're all living in the same city, the same town, the same state, the same country, the same region, the same Medina. How do we navigate the tension between me as an individual and us and protect the group also from enemies? It's a very delicate question. So many different systems emerge. He said, most of the systems, they have toiv and they have ra. Some points are good, right, true, moral, divine. And some points are ra, destructive. The nekudas hatoiv in every system was taken from Torah. The good point in every single system, that was taken from Torah. So in Torah you'll have capitalism, you'll have socialism, you'll have complete equality, you'll have differences. It's all true. In every system there's toiv and there's ra. Ain't toiv b'loy ra, ain't ra b'loy toiv. The nekudas ha-toiv, the point of toiv was taken from Torah. In the morning, you're a capitalist. At night, he owes you money, but you give him back those pajamas. Why? Ki chanun ani. He's going to scream. You have to you must never become deaf to the cry, to the reality, to the experience of the other person. Not all of us have this situation practically where tonight before sunset around 5:30 you're going to be running to somebody's house with a pair of pajamas. Thank God. But let me give you a different story. You're having a dispute with your brother. You're having a dispute with your sister. Present company excluded. You're having a dispute with your partner, with your friend, with your employee. You're having a dispute with your mother-in-law. Present company excluded. It's a serious dispute. You want to take away from them what they think is theirs, or what they claim is theirs, or what they in their delusions have decided is theirs. Legally, you're right. Rationally, you may be right as well. According to book texts, you're right. And you can do what you have to do, and you could go home with a clear conscience and say to yourself, I'm a good person. And sometimes, that's what you have to do. But sometimes, you have to listen to the words of the Chumash in Parshas Mishpatim. Ki hi ksusoi levada, hi simlosoi la'oirei, ba'amei yishkav, v'hoyo ki yitzak elai v'shamati ki chanananu. This alone is his covering, the garment for his skin, with what shall he sleep? This doesn't mean he's right, she's right, you're wrong. It means never become deaf to the experience of empathy. I need to always understand what another person is going through, even if they have made erroneous decisions. Even if they're living in a bubble and they see things from a very small place. Even, especially if they're suffering from a personality disorder, from a mental challenge, from traumas, from abuse. Even if person makes irresponsible decisions. It may all be true, and sometimes you have to create borders and protect yourself. We all know about that, and your therapist will explain that to you much more. But before you make your final decision, always ask yourself one question. And this is a question that people don't ask themselves. And the pain they cause themselves as a result of not asking that question is much more than many of your therapists will tell you. And that is 2 words, Bamei Yishkav. With what is she going to go to sleep? What will this do to her or to him? What will be the end result? What will I end up with, and what will they end up with? This does not mean, please don't misconstrue it as a message that people should be allowed to manipulate you, or take advantage of you, or crush you, or certainly abuse you, or cheat to you, or lie to you, or cover up facts, or for you to be lured into people's dysfunction and mishigasin and traumas and traps. A person should protect themselves and not allow themselves to be manipulated, so that people should utilize your goodness and decency as an opportunity to hurt you. Of course not. What it does mean is never allow justice, quote unquote, to blind you to the reality of another human being. Have the courage and dignity and self-esteem to consider the fate of the other person, the reality of the other person, the experience of the other person, and make a decision from a place of empathy, not just from a place of cold justice. Many situations in life, people are guided, follow the textbook, cold justice, you're right. And you know what? They're right. 5 years later, the person has not had a conversation with his mother. A grandmother hasn't seen grandchildren in 5 years. Brothers are not speaking to each other. Yeah, their father died. There was a big Yerusha. We know. He's a Ganev and a Goslin, and you went to the Rov and you went to the Torah, and he said, you're right, and he said, and he said, and I called the chief rabbi, and he told me I'm right. And you know what? I say, you're right. You're right. But in 35 years, when you're not going to know the names of any of your brother's children and grandchildren, and his children and grandchildren won't know the names of anybody in your family, you won't be able to show up at a simcha. You won't be able to say good Shabbos to each other. And nobody will know, but when you go to sleep deep down, you'll know that pain. You'll know that pain. Saying to yourself, I was right, will not alleviate the pain. It won't. So what do you want? Everybody should steal from me? Nobody should steal from you. But when you make decisions from a broad place. Don't sweat small stuff. Don't allow your soul or other people's soul to die because of a dispute. Know what is the ultimate priority. When you're healthy enough, when you have enough self-esteem, you could look at the big picture. Look at things not only short-term, long-term. Be big. Be generous. Be kind. Why? Because sometimes the pain of giving something up that is precious is far, far less than the pain of ripping up a family to shreds, of alienating yourself from your parents, from your siblings, of alienating children from their family. Now I know some of you are thinking, hey, he doesn't know my mother. He doesn't know my brother. He doesn't know my sister. I'm not talking a case of physical danger. I'm not talking about rape and abuse. I'm not talking about physical violence and danger. I'm not talking about that. I'm also not talking about emotional abuse where you have to create certain boundaries. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about decisions where in your head, intellectually, you're right. But emotionally, there was another way. You could have gotten off your high horse and made space for the reality of the other person without following everything to the letter of the law, because that's how your Yerushalayim is going to get destroyed. When I follow the letter of the law, and if it doesn't fit into my box, it's out. The Torah says that's not a way to live. It's too of an it's an impoverished way to live. I once asked a marriage therapist, from all of his years as a marital therapist, what was some of the most important lessons he learned. And he said something very profound. He said, years of doing marriage therapy taught me that sometimes there is mental illness, sometimes there's personality disorder, sometimes one of the parties has been very badly abused, and therefore they can't function in sanity. That's true. But he says very, very often, in all other cases, it's never, it's usually, and sometimes never, about right or wrong. He's right, she's wrong. She's right, he's wrong. And it's not how you solve the problem. And he said to me that the greatest compliment he gets constantly is when both the husband and the wife who are in conflict tell him, wow, I like that you're on my side. She says, you're on my side, and he says, you're on my side. He says, I know I'm doing the right thing. It's not about right or wrong. Very seldom is it about right and wrong. There are situations, again, somebody's just traumatized, they have a serious mental illness or a personality disorder, and then it's not rational anymore. But so many cases is not about that. What is it about? It's about the ability of one to see the other person's world. The ability of the other to see the other person's world. Not even to agree with you. And not even to see it like you see it. But to accept that this is your reality. And without the need to make fun of it. without the need to crush it, without the need to say there's only one way of looking at things. Because in a marriage, truth is usually not objective. It's subjective. Yes, we don't like agreeing. Somebody once said, what's the difference? It says, Minig Yisrael Tayruhu, and it also says, Minig Oisias Gehenim. Is Minig Tayru, is Minig Gehenim? I said, it's simple. If it's my Minig, it's Tayru. If it's your Minig, it's Gehenim. It's great to say it's objective, but it's not. There are exceptions, as I mentioned. It's really acknowledging. Two people are in a car. We're looking out the window. You see a landscape from the right window. I see a landscape from the left window. They're different landscapes. Nobody is blind. But marriage is driving a car together, if you haven't figured it out now, especially Chalamoyed. It's getting into a car. Used to be a station wagon, you remember? A brown or blue station wagon. Today, Baruch Hashem, we have updated. You're in a car. There's windows. You look out your window. I look out my window. I can't look out your window, but I can understand that you have a window and that you're looking through that window. Even if it's not my experience, it's not my emotion, and I can have all the excuses in the world and knock logic into his head or her head. But can you really tune in to the reality of the other person, to the reality of the other person's perspectives? So true with children, especially teenagers, people growing up. You could follow textbook, but you should have done this, you should have said that. And it's important to have priorities and values in textbooks. But you have to tune into where your child is. But why does the guy have to borrow money and be a schnorrer? Great question. He had an opportunity to get a job 3 weeks ago in the grocery store. He's lazy. I'm not giving him back his pajamas. Got it. It's 12 below zero, and you're going under a blanket, and he's beer in his house. Could you look at that? Can you shed a tear? Can you embrace that? If you can't, God says, you're depriving yourself from a relationship with life, from a relationship with the human condition. I want to tell you an experience I once had I'll never forget. Rabbi Soloveitchik passed away in 1993. Rabbi Yoshe Ber Soloveitchik, Zechorna Levracha, Rav Yosef Dov Halevi Soloveitchik, Rabbi J.B. Soloveitchik, who was the rabbi of Boston and the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshiva University, Yeshiva Rabbeinu Yitzchak Elchanan for many years. And he's considered one of the luminaries of modern Orthodoxy. He passed away Pesach 1993. I went to pay a shiva call. I was a yeshiva bacher, a yeshiva student. I went to pay a shiva call at his home in Brookline, Massachusetts. His two daughters were sitting shiva, Rebbetzin Twersky and Rebbetzin Lichtenstein. Rebbetzin Twersky was the wife of Rabbi Yitzchak Twersky, the Talner Rebbe and professor of Judaic studies at Harvard, and Rebbetzin Lichtenstein, the wife of Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein from Gush Etzion, who recently passed away. Those were the two daughters of Rabbi Soloveitchik sitting shiva. He has a son, Chaim, but I don't think he was there. I was sitting there. The two sons-in-law, Rabbi Twersky and Rabbi Lichtenstein, Zechronim Levracha, were standing, and the two women, the two daughters, Rebbetzin Lichtenstein and Rabbi Twersky, were sitting. And I still remember, it was pretty late at night, I think it was 10 or 11, maybe even a little later. I think it was even the last night of Shiva after Pesach. An old woman came in. She was short, she was skinny, she was frail. I don't know how old she was, but she looked like in the realm of 90, which was the age of Rabbi Soloveitchik, who has just passed. She sits down in front of Rebbetzin Twersky. And she says these words, and I was sitting 2 chairs over, so I heard it. And she says, I didn't know your father. I didn't know Rabbi Soloveitchik. I lived across the street. I'm living here most of my life, but I never had a chance to talk to him or to get to know him. But he would come outside and take a walk. And watching him from my window warmed my heart every single day. I felt privileged that I could live near him, and the greatness that was in my midst meant so much to me. It literally brought a smile to my face every day I would sit and watch him take a walk. It was very beautiful. The daughter, Rebbetzin Atara Twersky, began to sob. She's sitting there and sobbing. So someone close to her asked her, Atari, he said, or Mrs. Twersky, what triggered such sobs? And this is what she said. She said, for the last 7 days I'm sitting shiva here for my father, Rabbi Soloveitchik. Hundreds, thousands of people came. Not one person spoke about my father. Every person spoke about themselves. Every person. Your father told me. Your father went with me. I gave your father a ride. So I asked your father, and he said it's a good question. Your father was my teacher. Your father taught me this. All about themselves, using my father as the backdrop to talk about themselves. Your father and I were buddies. Your father and I were best friends. Your father screamed at me. Your father chastised me. Your father loved me. Your father had an issue with me. But somehow they were part of the picture. I came to your father. He came to me. I gave him a lift. I did this for him. I took him. I helped him. Blah, blah, blah. He had a crisis. He called me. He told me. He advised me. My shidduch, not my shidduch. Become a rabbi, not become. He says, everybody was talking about my father, of course, not about themselves. Nobody sat down and said, I'm going to talk about me. They spoke about my father. But really, they were talking about themselves. She said, because that's what people do. People talk about themselves. That's what they know, what to talk, that's what they know about, or they think they know about. They think. And that's what they want to talk about. That's what they want to talk about. They spoke about themselves through him. Either he liked them, or he loved them, or even disliked them. But they were involved somehow in his life. And she's sobbing. She says, this is the first person who came here in 7 days and spoke about my father. Not about herself. She said, I didn't know him. He never spoke to me. I wasn't a miyuchis. He didn't think I'm brilliant. He didn't think I'm his chavrusa. He didn't think I'm his talmud. I never spoke a word to the man in my life. There's nothing. I'm not part of the story. But I cherished him. He did something for me. And I was a bacher, and I was watching this. I was like, wow. She didn't speak about herself. I want to tell you another story. This story I did not experience. It's a story about a man named Fiorello LaGuardia. I do spend a lot of time in LaGuardia Airport, named after Mayor LaGuardia. Certainly with all the delays in LaGuardia, I spend extra time with Mayor LaGuardia's legacy. But he died in 1947, before I was born. He was Jewish. Mayor LaGuardia was Jewish, yet as many Jews of his generation, he chose not to wear his Jewish heritage on his sleeve. He allowed the public to identify him as an Italian, which is why even such a erudite crowd as you don't know that he was Jewish. And when issues of Jewish interest came up in New York or national politics, the little flower, as they called him, was an ardent advocate for Jewish rights. As mayor of New York in the 1940s, he was one of Hitler's most outspoken components, most outspoken spokesmen and opponents. LaGuardia, his father was a Catholic. His mother grew up in an observant Jewish home in Trieste, in Italy. So his mother was an Italian Jew, his father was a Catholic. In his day, he was popular for riding in the fire trucks with firefighters, joining police officers on their beats and taking orphan children to baseball games. But I want to tell you one story about Mayor LaGuardia. It was an icy, bone-chilling night in January 1935 during the depths of the Great Depression. And you know what a New York cold night in January can be like? Mayor LaGuardia arrives at a night court in one of the poorest areas in New York. He told the judge to take the night off, and he presided over the court. A short time later, an old woman dressed in torn clothing stands before him. She is charged of stealing a loaf of bread. LaGuardia looks at her and tells the woman, "Did you steal the loaf of bread?" She said, "Yes." And then she said, she has a daughter. Her daughter was married. Her daughter's husband ran away, fled the home. Her daughter was sick. Her daughter has 2 children. They had no father. He left. Their mother was sick, and they had no bread to eat. They would die from starvation. So she went to a store, and she shoplifted a loaf of bread to feed her grandchildren. LaGuardia turned to the shopkeeper. He's the one who pressed charges against this lady whom he caught stealing the bread. The shopkeeper turned to LaGuardia and he said, "Listen, I feel sorry for this woman, but this is a bad neighborhood. Everybody steals. They love stealing here. This is a poor neighborhood. People have no money. And if you don't punish her and you don't use her as an example, the moral caliber of this town will become catastrophic. Everybody will steal. You must punish her to set an example for everyone else." No, what do? Mayor LaGuardia had a dilemma. Under the law, the woman was guilty. She stole a loaf of bread from a store. She would have to be punished. Given the reasons for her committing the crime, he felt to punish her would be an injustice. She had no money, and there were 2 kids starving to death, 2 grandchildren. How could you punish her? The textbook penalty for shoplifting in 1935 was $10 or 10 days in jail. $1 per day. $10, 1935 during the Depression, a lot of money. 10 days in jail is 10 days in jail, $1 a day. What would you do if you were the judge? $10, 10 days in jail. LaGuardia fined the woman $10. He said, "Justice is justice. A thief must be fined." Then he did something which stunned the courthouse. He took out a $10 bill from his wallet. He gave it to the woman so she could pay her fine. Then he looked around the crowded, bustling courtroom, and he fined everybody in the courtroom 50 cents. Why? For living in a city in which a grandmother had to steal a loaf of bread to feed her grandchildren. He directed the bailiff to collect the fines and hand all the money to the defendant. The total collected sum came to $47.50, including the 50 cents willingly paid by the shopkeeper. The poor woman was led to court to face charges, was overwhelmed. LaGuardia paid her $10 to cover the fine, and she received a gift of $47.50. Everyone paid the fine, and they gave Mayor LaGuardia a standing ovation. Where did LaGuardia get this justice from? His mother came from an observant, knowledgeable Torah family, a Pasuk Mishpatim. It's your collateral. The guy has your money, you could take his shirt. Quid per quo. And I'll prove it to you. A whole day it's in your closet and it's not called theft. And you're right. But at night, Bamei Yishkov, what is he going to sleep in? And when he cries, God says, I'm going to listen. And therefore I need you to listen. To uphold a society one has these two realities called tzedek and mishpat. And that's why they always work together in the Tanakh. Mishpat u'tzedakah b'Yakov ata asisa. God says, I love Avraham because he will teach his children. V'shamru derech Hashem lasa is tzedakah u'mishpat. What are the two things? Mishpat is justice. Tzedakah is tzedakah, generosity, love, kindness, empathy. Tzedakah also is connected to the word tzedek, but it's also connected to the word tzedakah. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdoif, twice. LaGuardia understood that in a city where people could go into a store and shoplift, you destroy the morality of a community. You destroy civilization. You're not allowed to steal. LaGuardia also understood that if I can't hear the cry of a grandmother who will not allow two children to starve to death and will therefore steal, I have lost my right to be able to create a society of justice. And people living in a society where a grandmother has to come to this situation have to be fined for that. Mishpat u'tzedakah. In life, there are borders to maintain, values to sustain, priorities to keep precious and sacred, morality that can't be altered and custom-made for everybody's moods and experiences and ups and downs. But here, the Torah goes out of its way to create a new genre of law. And that is, never ever allow yourself to become deaf to the sob of another, to the cry of another. Never allow yourself to shut down to the painful, agonizing reality that you are a witness of. And even if you're right on the books, never ever make a decision which may be justified from a textbook point of view, but which your soul will not forgive you for. Your conscience will not forgive you for it. Your children may not forgive you for it. Be much bigger. Allow yourself to make your decisions, not just with a cold mind, but with a warm, sensitive, loving, and forgiving soul. Have a wonderful week.
The end of the pasuk is a little.
V'shamati ki chananane.
No, because they say that if you don't, I'm going to listen to him. He's going to come to me, and I'm going to listen to him.
That's not what he says.
So, what is that? A threat that if you listen to him?
No. Just like I'm listening to him, you also listen to him. You understand?
Sounds like.
No, that's what the Medrash says.
Then he's going to come to me and he's going to cry to me and I'm going to...
No. The Medrash says that he's going to talk to Hashem and say, we're both humans. Why don't I have a bed? So what is that? But I told you the Medrash. He's a person, I'm a person. Why don't I have a bed? God says that's what he's going to tell me. And what's my answer to that question? I don't have an answer to that question. And you certainly don't have an answer to that question. God may have an answer, but you don't have an answer. So give it to him.
Thank you so much. It was beautiful.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming. Yes, next week, ladies, if I can have your kind attention for a moment. Next week there will be a class right here. The week after, the class moves to Rabbi Rudinsky's Shul, 73 Forshay Road. That's 2 weeks from today. Next week, it's still going to be here. Welcome. Thank you. It's a very good question. The answer is when somebody steals money from me or from you, you deserve to get back your money. No question. The question you have to ask yourself is, what are the pros and what are the cons? For example, and this is a very personal question that people have to decide. I know a person, I'm just giving you an example. I know a person, and I can't tell somebody else to do that, but I'm just telling you a person I know who somebody owed the family $80 million. In the family, very rich family, $80 million. It would have been in court for 30 years. And the woman told me, she removed all charges. I said, why? She said, because I wanted a peaceful life. I didn't want me, my kids, my whole family dragged in court. Yom V'Layla. It was not worth the $80 million. Now, I can't say that that's a directive for every person. What I so appreciated was she looked at her life and she said, I have to make a choice. Is it the money or is it me and my children? And she chose herself and the children. She had basic, but she struggled. But she told me it was worth my dignity to be able to have much less and live with menucha than to know that I'm in court. She knew it's not going to be a year. The person she was dealing with. So I think every person has to make that decision. The decision that she was making wasn't just, he owes me the money, but you're at stake. Your heart, your serenity, your future, your mental space. Does that mean people should get away with murder? Absolutely not. But I really have to ask myself, in the big picture, create room for empathy. And empathy for whom? For me, for your children. There's also empathy for the other person in the terms of their own quagmire. It's not easy, because if a person is a perpetrator, I don't want to go there. But it doesn't mean they're not a perpetrator. What it does mean is when I watch a person acting from such a place of venom and craziness and insanity, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to pray that God helps them, but I'm not going to become entangled in it.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.